I hadn't had a visit from my family in like 8 years. I didn't see my parents, well, my mom and my stepfather eventually, we ended up close before I went to prison. So I hadn't seen them in years, but they sounded the same on the phone. But I get to Raybrook and you smell the pine trees. Sometimes I still think about that stuff. Just the smell like Western New York. And you're like, you're so close yet so far away. Damn, I'm sorry that it's affected me like that. But sometimes I'm back in that moment. Like I can smell them trees right now. And I'm like, damn, I'm home. I'm close. But I'm so close yet so far away. And then I would see my parents. Like they came to visit me and I was like, they don't look the way I thought they looked. They still sound the same on the phone, but they're old now. And, they're having trouble like walking in here, even, 8-10 years. I think it might have been 10 years I hadn't had a visit in 10 years, so far away, but
it's a long freaking time.
Yeah, but then to see them, it's like, damn, man.
Let's repeat the non-conformist oath. I promise to be different. I promise to be unique. I promise not to repeat things other people say.
Welcome back to Positive Blatherings. Hey, and it's brought to you by our friends over at Salvatore's Pizza. You want to get a nice slice, go over to Salvatore's. The newest location, I think, is the one right here in Bushnell's Basin, right around the corner. Say hi to them, tell them Fitz sent you, and they'll still charge you, but, it's worth a shot. My guest today is a really big inspiration for me since I met this gentleman a few years ago, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk more about his story. Chad Marks, he's the proprietor of Blood on the Razor Wire YouTube channel, Blood on the Razor Wire TV, and you're also a published author with the book of the same title, Blood on the Razor Wire, and basically chronicling your prison life, your 20 plus years in prison.
17 years, 5 months, and 21 days.
But who's counting?
I got it down, right?
Yeah. But so, that, and I've been working with you in your studio and listening to the stories for the people that you interview and have on your podcast. And it's an entirely different world that I am just now learning about. And I mean, some of the things that you guys were saying, you're using terminology that's pretty specific to being incarcerated and in that life that I'm like, what do they even mean? So I just wanted to break down kind of what got you there and your journey from the time you got out to now.
So what got me to prison?
Yeah.
I grew up in Rochester, New York, Lyle Avenue area. Was a drug dealer. Not a very good person. Sold drugs in the neighborhood. Like I said, we grew up poor, single mother on welfare, father out of the house. Father's a drug addict. Father leaves when I'm young. End up with a stepfather. Not the best situation. So, growing up poor, kids picking on us, a little embarrassed, dirty clothes, holes in our shoes. And eventually I'm like, you know what? I become a product of my environment. But at the end of the day, I made my own decisions. Yeah. And I felt like, hey, at 14, I had to do something. I had to make some kind of money, and this was the way that I figured out how to make money. So I started selling, powder cocaine back then. And then I graduated to, eventually it would become hard. I don't know what I can say on here, but
say whatever you want.
Eventually it would become crack cocaine. Yeah. Not something that I'm proud of. Mm-hmm. And eventually I end up, being arrested by the federal government. I go to trial, lose trial, get sentenced to 40 years in prison. Damn. After, the 17 years, Trump ends up changing the law. And while in prison, I become a jailhouse lawyer. I get a college degree, all that stuff. Jailhouse lawyer is kind of like a term that they use in there. But I start to learn the law, and I figure something out after Trump passes what's called the First Step Act. And I figure out this legal argument. And I told this guy, he was a former sheriff, former mayor in Texas, had 25 years. I said, I think I can get you out. I said, I think I'm right on this legal argument. He's, let's try it. So we try it, and I win. And because of that legal argument that I wrote, thousands and thousands of people would end up being released from federal prison. People that deserve to be released, including myself.
Wow. That's incredible. So how long did it take you how long were you studying law in prison?
So from the day that I got arrested in February 2003. I ended up getting released June 20th, 2020. So I always felt like, hey, no one's going to fight for my life like I'm going to fight for it, so I better learn the law. I better figure this out. You can pay lawyers $40,000, $50,000, and at the end of the day, it all sounds good when when you're hiring these folks and they're going to fight for you, and then when you're calling them, they don't even answer the phone after they get paid.
And you're also at their mercy if you don't know what the argument is and what the law is. You just kind of got to trust them.
Yeah, and that's not always a good thing.
When I first met you, you're like, dude, I've been in jail. I don't know shit about what's going on. I don't know how to use a phone. I don't know how to use a computer, because in all that time is when 2003 to 2020 is when all of this stuff happened. Like everything happened. The technology boomed in that time, and you got out during COVID. That must have sucked.
Well, I mean, I could have got out butt naked in another country.
It wouldn't matter. Happy. Yeah.
Nothing really mattered at that point.
I guess so.
But I was in one of the hardest hit prisons during COVID. There was numerous people dying in that prison. People are running in with these hazmat suits on, and you're just like, wow.
Wow.
And like you said, I was in prison for that 17 years. So, yeah, everything was different. And to see people running in here with these suits on, and you start thinking like some sci-fi type of stuff.
Right?
Like, what's really going on? They had because it was a medical prison also. So what they had, it was I was in FMC Lexington, Federal Medical Center Lexington, my last year or so of being in prison. So in that prison, in that medical facility, like they took a unit and they sealed it like with plastic and, this big thick plastic, and they're going in there with all these suits on and respirators, and you see people running out with people that have, pretty much passed away. I mean, they're running out with people on gurneys because nobody knew what was going on. But it was definitely a crazy time, but thankful to be released during COVID. So I wasn't stuck in there. I could control my own environment. So I didn't end up dying. I felt like, look, I've been through way too much in my life for my story to end like that, to end up with COVID and die in prison,
Were you, how did you feel when you were going to prison? Were you frightened about it, or were you ready, or was it kind of like, I got this? Because you're from the streets, so you kind of knew the people that were there, or knew how to act in that environment.
So, I was 24 years old when I was arrested. I ended up with a 40-year sentence. I don't think you can ever be prepared for a 40-year sentence. Was I afraid, scared? I went to probably one of the most dangerous prisons in the country. I went to USP Big Sandy. It's in Kentucky. It's a federal prison. A lot of people have a misconception that federal prison is sweet. It's camp fed, and it's nothing like that. It's worse than New York State prison. I mean, I've seen people get murdered in prison. I've seen people stabbed. I've been stabbed in prison. I've been hit in the back of the head with a padlock. People are like, why are they doing this, right? When they're watching the show. I mean, for the smallest things. Like I got stabbed over $40. Somebody owed me $40, and instead of paying me, he decided, you know what? I'm going to stab Chad today and go to a different prison so I don't have to pay him $40. Wow. So when you think about that, in that environment, to a lot of people, your life has no meaning. If someone will stab you for $40, and he stabbed me in the back right near my spine, stabbed me 3 times, I could have lost my life. I could have been paralyzed for $40 that he owed me. But he was a guy that was serving a life sentence. He was out of D.C. He was a Korean kid, Korean and white. And he was actually in prison for robbing people, and I think he had a couple bodies. He would go to your house. He was a little dude. He would go to your house, and you answer the door, and he would hit you with a taser and shock you. And then he would go in your house and rob your house and take your life.
Jeez. Edward
Nelson. At least that's I know he had life. At least that's the story that was circulating amongst the prisoners. Once I was in the hole, I'm like, man, who is this dude that stabbed me? And they're like, man, that dude's got life. Man, he was, robbing people's houses in D.C. or Virginia and hitting them with a electrocuting them, and they'd go out and he'd rob the house and then he'd kill you, take your life.
What was the first thing that you learned when you got to prison that was like shocking, like, holy crap, I had no idea?
So one of the first things that I learned as soon as you get to federal prison, because I had been in state prison too. So when you get to federal prison, everything is racially segregated. Every race owns something. That's the white TV. That's the black TV. That's the Mexican TV. Or, even mop buckets. That's the black mop bucket and the black mop. Don't use it. That's the white one. You can use the white one only. That's the Mexican one. Don't use that. Don't touch the black TV. Don't touch the Mexican TV. Don't try to change the channel. Don't try to put on the show that you want. And, violations like that could get you killed. If you were to do that, you're definitely getting stabbed in many of the maximum security prisons in federal prison.
Jesus. Is it true, like they say in the movies, when you get there, you kick somebody's ass right away so that you don't get your ass kicked?
No, that's all nonsense. So, when you walk into federal prison and you're white, this is the white perspective, all the white dudes in the unit come up to you. Like they said, not every single, but there's, they got dudes that always are like, hey, you guys are kind of like the committee, I guess. But there's always dudes in there that want to be in everyone else's business as well. So these dudes surround you as soon as you walk in. Where are you from, man? How much time you got? And then they outline that you have to have your paperwork, which means, hey, you have to show us what you're in prison for. You can't be in here if you abused, someone or kids, little ones or anything like that. If you told on anybody, you're definitely in trouble, like serious trouble amongst the prison population. So they outline that right away. Look, this is what it is. You got to have your paperwork. You got 30 days. And pretty much you get your paperwork, they give you a knife. When they clear you, they call it your driver's license. When they clear you and say, yep, you didn't abuse anyone. Yep, you didn't tell on anybody. You're in good standing. Here you go. And they pretty much offer you a knife. They offer you a weapon immediately.
Wow. So it's like your interview. It's like when you first get there.
You get a prison interview.
How long before you started to reflect on your life and was like, I gotta do something. I gotta change something?
So, I was reflecting on my life from the time that I was arrested. When you walk into federal court and they read you the statute and say you're facing 10 to life. And I'm like, damn, 10 to life. 10 years is a long time. But I'm like, well, 10 years. And I'm counting, I'll be 34 when I get out. That's what you're thinking. You're like, you're not really contemplating or understanding or comprehending that, that life means you can end up with 30 or 40 years. And eventually I end up with 40 years. So I start, reflecting on my life like, wow, look what I did. Look what I did to myself. And you start thinking, am I ever going to get out of here? And then as you start to learn the legal process and you start to learn the law, you start to understand that you're really not facing 10 years. That's your mandatory minimum. When they start adding up your points and adding up, how much drugs were involved, and they got all these enhancements. You were the manager of 5 or more people. There was a weapon involved. There was a 12-gauge shotgun in the house. So that's another 2 points. And then you look at their guideline chart, and I'm looking at the guideline chart, and my guidelines were 292 to 365 months, which is pretty much 24 to 30 years. That was just on the drug charge. But later, the government, because I didn't accept their plea agreement that they offered with the 292 months or whatever it was up there, 24, 30 years. I decide, you know what, I'm not taking their plea agreement, and now they charge me with some more charges. Now my mandatory minimum that was 10 to life now becomes 40 to life. I can't get anything less than 40 years. So now I'm getting ready to go to trial, and now they come back with another plea agreement. Hey, take 27 years. I believe it was 27 years. I said, I can't take 27 years. I sent my lawyer back in there and said, hey, see if they'll give me 17. And remember, I paid $40,000 for this lawyer. He comes back and says, they're not going to do 17. Maybe I can get you 25. And they wouldn't budge on 25 either. There was 27 or go to trial. So now I'm like, well, 27 years and 40, I might as well take a chance, right? So I take the chance, and I end up with my mandatory minimum being 40. And the judge says, look, I pretty much the probation in the government, after I was convicted, they asked that the judge sentence me to life plus 30 years. And the judge said, I'm going to act in a moment of compassion for your mother, not for you, but for your mother. And I'm going to impose a sentence of 40 years, the mandatory minimum. And he made some comments that if that isn't sufficient and not greater than necessary to achieve the goals of sentencing, then I don't know what is. And eventually that same judge, when the law changes and I write that legal argument, it's Judge Larimer, who I built a relationship with him, believe it or not. He ends up resentencing me to 20 years because the law changes. And there becomes a point where he calls me into his chambers and he says, look, I got twin boys that are 4 years old. And he says, I want you and your wife and your kids to come here after I get out, because eventually I get out early on the compassionate release motion. And he says, look, pretty much I went out on a limb. I want you to do the right thing. Don't make me look bad. I gave you a second chance at life, and I'm forever grateful. And, he's wrote me a few letters while he was there. He just wrote me recently and said, look, I'm retiring and I wish you the best. I know that you're doing well, continue to do well. I'm proud of you. So that mattered to me.
When I first met you, I was, kind of taken aback by the story. You have a persona of like, you're not going to take any bullshit, right? You're like, that's my first impression of you is like, here's a guy, he knows what he wants. He's not going to put up with any bullshit. He's not going to take any shit from people. That's just the first feeling I got. But after I got to know you, you're a really thoughtful, empathetic, and just genuinely good person. And I want to try to, how do you reconcile that with going back to when you were doing the things you were doing? And I understand that you were doing that to survive and you were in your environment, but what was it like for your mom and for family members and people that you cared about who saw this, and how'd you feel inside when it's like, you're doing this, you probably don't want to do this, but I got to do this, and it's got to be hell on you.
Sometimes I could say, you know what, man, I was the biggest dummy, right? Kind of like the Biggest Loser show. I was probably like the biggest dummy. Back then, you think you got it all figured out. And had I just applied myself to doing, good things, I could have been a lawyer probably. Like my lawyer that I'm really, really close with, Jill Harrington in Jersey, she's like, you could have done anything with your life. You're extremely intelligent. And I'm like, well, I appreciate that. It wasn't like... I wasn't look, when you're living that life, you're living that life. I wasn't out here abusing people and trying to, hurt normal citizens. And yeah, I was a drug dealer and I regret it every day. So I've always been empathetic, but I think that comes from us growing up poor and wanting people to be, have some compassion for us or, help us. And it always hurt my feelings to see other kids like us that were poor, that were dirty. And you're literally going to the corner store for $1 worth of bologna to make fried bologna sandwiches, like with a food stamp. And I would travel away from my local store and go a little further away so no one from my school seen me. But you know what? There were other kids just like me traveling to the same store so other people didn't see them. But we didn't understand that we were living, pretty much living in poverty. So, like now I do a lot of stuff in the neighborhood that I help destroy, like Lyle Avenue area. Like I help people over there. I feed people over there. I clothe people over there. I have a sober reentry living house. And, you get paid for the people, whatever, but there's 8 people there right now that they don't pay for. In fact, I was talking about this the other day. We've been over 2 months without getting paid, but I still have to pay the gas and electric, which is $2,500. I still clothe people there that are getting out of prison that have no clothing. Like I've been fortunate through my paralegal business and my construction business to have funds to help other people. So not necessarily reconciling what I did or what I was doing at the time. I do feel like I owe because I took from the community. So I feel like I owe a little something. So let's give it back. But I enjoy doing it also. It's something that I actually enjoy. If I could just do that, work in those neighborhoods and have the sober living house, that's what I would do that. But I would probably also continue to do YouTube as well.
Do you have certain people that maybe were there at the beginning that you are still close with now that have also changed like you, gone through it?
So I interviewed a guy last night on my channel who was involved with me from the beginning. I'll be candid. We talk about this in the interview where I met him. The first day I met him, I pulled a gun out on him as soon as I met him because the day before he was with another guy that was in a truck and he grabbed my necklace and drove away and popped my necklace. And then the guy comes back and we catch him. And he's this dude that I interviewed last night, white dude, monster. He's the driver. And he was caught up in addiction. He worked my door. He was security at some of my houses. And, I connected with the dude. Like I thought he was a good dude. He's a big white dude, 6'3", and he was young. And I'm like, damn, dude, just a little bit older than me at the time. And I'm like, bro, you got to get out of this stuff. Like, man, you're smoking crack. Like, get your life together. You got a beautiful girl, and you can really do something with your life. And I didn't fully understand his story back then because we never talked about it. But yesterday, I learned a whole bunch of stuff that I didn't know. Like the stuff that he had been through. He's been through more than I had been through. Like being locked in a secure facility at 11 years old for 5 years, never getting a visit from his mother, not seeing his mother in 5 years. 11-year-old kid. So, yeah, I do a lot of stuff to give back because I don't want to say it's guilt, but it's compassion. Like I want to help people. I really wish that people would really help people. Some of these organizations in Rochester, there's no problem making $1 if you're making a difference, right? And I always say that. But if you're just out here taking and not really giving, you're not giving back, you probably don't belong in this circle. And hopefully those people get eliminated from that circle.
Yeah, I agree. What was it like when you the first person that you helped What was that feeling like when you saw that you were making a difference to somebody?
Are you talking about while in prison or outside of prison?
Outside of prison, or it could be in prison too. I mean, if you did stuff while you were in prison too.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I got numerous people out of prison. I've gotten.
So you did that while you were in prison? Yeah,
I probably got 20 people out that had life sentences.
Oh wow! I thought that was afterwards.
No,
so you were still in prison when you did that?
I was in prison when I was writing these motions, and that first motion I wrote from my jail cell, and I saved the emails from lawyers that told me I was 100% wrong. I mean, these are top-notch criminal defense attorneys. And I'm like, I'm not wrong, and guess what? I wasn't wrong. But I saved those, kind of like receipts. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe
kind of like being arrogant. I probably shouldn't have been, but I wanted to have that to prove the people wrong. Like, I was a prisoner, and I did it.
Yeah.
They got law degrees, and they didn't do it, but I did it. One of my first cases that I did was, I was doing law work. I was in USP Coleman, in Coleman, Florida, maximum security prison. And we get locked down. And there's this kid that I kick it with, black kid from Tennessee. I was kind of friends with this dude. And he's like, hey, man, I got my reply I got to do for my motion, and we're locked down. And the guy that wrote all my stuff in the law library, he's like, in another unit, there's no way to get help, and I only got 10 days or whatever it was. He's like, could you write this for me? I'll pay you. So I'm like, man, I never really did anyone else's cases but my own. I just, I do my own. So I'm like, you know what, man, I guess I'll do it. And he's like, how much you want? I was like, I don't know, whatever you want to give me. So he gives me like $30 in commissary, soap, deodorant. And I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. So I do it. And I win the case. And the kid gets a reduction on his sentence. Then I get another guy from Florida who's got like 30 years. And he's like, hey, man, I need your help. Could you help me? And I'm like, man, I don't know about doing a 2255. You got 30 years, So 2255 is a post-conviction motion. And, we make some arguments for ineffective assistance of counsel. And then I win that case. And he goes back to court. Well, now everybody wants to hire me at the jail. And I end up getting some really high-profile cases that I end up doing. One was for a guy named Adaris Mazio Black. I mean, this guy had a face transplant and all kinds of stuff. He ended up with a life sentence. He's still in prison. Long story short, we weren't successful, but I'm still doing his stuff to this day. And we built that relationship. As far as helping people in the street, before prison, even when I was a drug dealer, there's a guy here that owns a big, big construction company now. I'm not going to say the name of it or who he is, but, there was one time he tried to sell me his Carhartt jacket, brand new, for $20. And we talked about this after I got out of prison. And I was like, man, I'm just going to give you what you want. Keep your Carhartt jacket. And if you sell it to someone else, I did tell him this, I'm going to punch you in the mouth. And he never forgot that. And he was like, you remember that? And I was like, yeah. And then when I had got out of prison, I needed someone housing was very difficult for me. So I needed someone to co-sign for an apartment for me. And I had called him. And, this dude's a millionaire now. And I had called him like, yo, bro, I don't really need nothing from you except for you to sign for me to live in this apartment complex out in Spencerport. And he was like, first, he was kind of like, he's like, you know what, man? Remember that time with my jacket? And he reminded me of the jacket story I just told you. He's like, I'm going to sign for you. And he's like, you know what? The rent's $1,500 a month. If you screw me and I had to pay it, who cares? I said, I just need a little bit of help. I said, give me 6 months. I'll be all the way on my feet. And within 6 months, I was all the way on my feet. I wasn't struggling. I paid the rent every month. And I was making, really good money. Look, I'll just, viewers are watching. They might want to know. My first month out of prison, as crazy as this sounds, I made like $30,000 doing legal work. I didn't expect that. I expected if I can get one case a month, make $2,000, a month, and have a job and work on cases at night, I'll be okay with that. And I made $30,000 in the first month because that legal argument that I wrote, and I also wrote for Criminal Legal News, Prisoners Legal News, all these people knew me. I didn't know that all these people knew me. I didn't know that, and I wrote that legal argument. So everyone's like, hey, we need help. Reach out to Chad. Reach out to Chad Marks. He'll help you. And being in prison, making peanuts, I'm out here and I'm working. I'm doing 2 or 3 cases a day. Like, I'm really getting things done. I'm not screwing around. I'm getting things done and I'm winning cases. And I probably win more cases than any paralegal or lawyer in the country. Some lawyers might say, I don't win every case. I lose sometimes too. A lot of people won't tell you that part. But I tell people that when they hire me, I said, look, it's possible that we could lose. You could pay me and still lose. And I put that in the contract. I want people to know that. It's possible to lose. But the one thing that I can guarantee is if I do it, it's going to be done correctly. And I'm going to put you in the best possible position to win and to get out of prison. And, unfortunately, in this space, there's people that are pretending to know what they're doing. And there's plenty of people and other prison consultants and paralegals that have told me, like, hey, man, I used your stuff. I used your stuff to win this case. Like, they would cut and paste my stuff. But then when you got to do the reply, it's not always easy because, it's got to be case specific.
Yeah.
So, but, there's other guys out here that are pretending that they know what they're doing. There's other guys selling, hope. And I despise those people that do that because I was that guy in there looking for hope.
Yeah.
I mean, I called lawyers that told me $50,000. I was like, $50,000? I've been in jail 10 years. I've been in jail 15 years now. Now I've been in here 17. I don't have 50,000. I don't have 50,000 cents, let alone $50,000. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, I mean, I had to learn the law. I had to get myself out.
But now you're dedicated to spreading this word about prison life, about and I'm assuming that you're trying to get to the younger people to put them on a different path so that they don't make the mistakes that you did and that the other people that you work with did. And I mean, that's got to be really difficult.
Well, the mission is to save, kids from life imprisonment and premature death in the streets. That's really what the mission is, because I understand what it is to suffer. Sometimes there's punishment, but sometimes it's suffering. After a certain amount of time, I had wrote my judge and told him that. I said, I'm no longer being punished. I'm suffering. And if you can save people from the suffering, if you can get people to change their mindset, that, hey, look, like I just said, I make more money now than I ever made selling drugs. Apply yourself. I wish I would have done that. I wouldn't have suffered. 17 years in prison, I suffered. There were times when, I would reflect on my life. Don't think that there aren't times when I looked out the window and, cried at Christmas time and seen the snow coming down and thinking about my mom and my sister and my family and all the things that I lost. I was married, went to prison, obviously got a divorce. I had 40 years. But I mean, even that comes full circle. I get out of prison, remarry her, and now we have twin boys. I mean, it's like a crazy, crazy story, and I never expected that to ever happen. So, it is about trying to help folks from going through what I went through. That's not a place for the guy I interviewed yesterday. He was in a detention center at 11 years old. Didn't get a visit from his mom. Was in there 5 years. You know what that's like for I can't even imagine what it's like for an 11-year-old kid.
No.
But those kid prisons, what they're doing is they're preparing you for the big leagues. And I hate to say it like that. It's kind of like playing little league baseball, right? Yeah. They're preparing you. They're preparing you for the bigger ponies, and then high school baseball, and then you go on to you're playing for minor leagues, and then you're just getting ready. You're preparing. And there's so many kids in the inner city, in my neighborhood, Lyle Avenue, Conkey Avenue, Harris Street, Clifford Avenue. I just drive through there and I'm like, sometimes I drive through there and don't even realize why I'm doing it, because I go home and I'm depressed. You're looking at these kids and you're like, damn, they ain't got a chance in France. They don't have a shot in the world. And some people will comment and say, and I've seen these comments where they're like, everyone makes their own decisions. Well, when you're a little kid and your mother's on welfare and she's selling the food stamps and she's getting high, this is the only decision you got. This is all you know. Like, now I live a wonderful life. I go to Aruba twice a year. I know about, what it is to go on. I didn't know any of that stuff. I was making money selling drugs. Didn't know nothing about real life. Real life to me was, I'm going to have a nice car and put, nice stereo system in there, and I'm going to buy whatever clothes I want. And I'm going to go to the club with my boys every Friday night. That's not life. That's a lie. Now I know what it's like to make money, save money, and do good things with my life.
Now, obviously, it's a whole different podcast to talk about what's broken in the system. What would you say? And probably impossible to whittle it down to just one thing, but what's the most broken part of the prison system that you experienced?
The most broken part? So I'm going to answer this in two different ways, right? Number one, the number one problem with all these problems is their character education. There's no character education, right? And as far as prison goes, there's a cultural problem where the police that work in there, the cops, the COs, correctional officers, whatever you want to call them, deputies, there's this sentiment that, hey, you're a piece of shit, you're the lowest of the low, and I'm going to treat you like shit. And there is no incentive to do right to get out of prison. You get 40 years in federal prison, you do 36 years with good time. What incentive is there? How do you fix it? You put cameras on these people. I mean, you've seen what's going on in New York State Department of Corrections. I mean, they killed a couple people, but, beating people to a pulp in New York State prison has been going on for years. It's just now coming to light because of social media, and people are, fed up. I'm not hug a thug and all that stuff either. I've been to prison. I just think that there has to be rules followed on both ends, right? But if you gave people an incentive, and I'm going to give you this example, which I've given other times. One of the most dangerous prisons in the country at the time I went to prison was USP Big Sandy. So let's say they give you a 40-year sentence and they say, hey, look, you can earn your way out of prison. We're going to get you some character education. We're going to get you a trade. It might take about 8 years for us to get you right. And the first thing we're going to do is teach you how to wake up in the morning, make your bed, comb your hair, pull your pants up, teach you how to go get a job. But this is going to be a program. Get you a college degree, get you an associate's degree. I got a college degree in prison. I paid for it myself. But train these people and let them earn their way out. But if you don't really want to get out of prison, you got a 20-year sentence, you got a 40-year sentence, we got a place for you. We're going to put you in Big Sandy. You can go over there and be an animal. You want to stab people? Okay, do what you want to do. Here it is. But you're not going to be able to earn your way out of prison. But if you want to get out of prison, then this is what we got for you. We got this program. First 2 years, character education. Next 2 years, college degree. Next 2 years, teach you a trade. Earn your way out. And I think society would benefit, and I think that, I just think everyone would benefit. You, the prisoner, the person who committed a crime, as well as society. There's a lot of people in prison that don't need 20 years in prison to change their lives, to change their criminal thinking, to change the way that they go about things. You don't need 20 years. You probably need something, and it probably isn't 1 year like you see in the county jail that these guys go do a year, get out, you're back stealing shit out of Home Depot. You probably need a significant sentence, but who determines what significant is? I think 8 years is significant for anybody. 10 years is it's probably a little extreme. And people are like, oh, he's a bleeding heart liberal. I'm not at all. I mean, if you take someone's life, then yeah, there's different consequences. If you're a nonviolent drug offender like I was and get sentenced to 40 years, I think it's ridiculous. One of my closest friends in prison was sentenced to life in prison for marijuana, nonviolent marijuana offense. I was able to help get him out once I got out. He ended up getting clemency. But guys like that, did he deserve a life sentence for a nonviolent marijuana offense?
Hell no.
Of course not.
Hell no.
I was a crack dealer. I was a piece of shit. Did I deserve to go to prison for 40 years at the age of 24? Probably not.
Would you consider yourself a bad dude back then? Were you a bad guy? I mean, I know you did bad things, but were you a bad guy?
I think I did bad things. I think that I was a good person, maybe misdirected.
Yeah.
Product of my environment, not an excuse, but definitely a product of what I seen in my neighborhood. And that's the stuff that you have to clean up. Yeah. So people don't become a product of their environment. People don't become, you know what, I ain't got nothing but this. All I can do is sell drugs. I think you were there for the interview with the kid the other day. Dion, the heavier set black kid. Were you there for that interview?
I don't know.
He talked about his mom and, yeah, you might not have been there, but he had talked about his mom and what it was like growing up and being poor with 4 or 5 siblings. A lot of times you don't have a shot. This is your neighborhood. You do become a product of your environment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and there's a lot of people who disagree with that, and I don't get it.
Yeah,
I don't get it. And it's the same crowd that says, "Oh, you have choices. You can make choices." And sometimes you don't have a choice. They think, from the outside, they think, here I am, a privileged guy living in suburbia. I think, oh, he didn't have to go do that, but I'm not there. I don't know what the hell's going on.
Like I said, sometimes you make the only choice that you can make. You're 11 years old. Your mother's on welfare. She sells her food stamps. There's no food in the house. You go to Wegmans, and now you start to learn how to steal because your stomach's touching your back. So then it progresses from, I'm going to steal some food just because I'm hungry. So like, you know what? That wasn't so bad. Now I'm going to go to the mall and steal a shirt. Now I'm going to steal some pants. You know what? This ain't cutting it. This ain't enough. Now I'm going to start selling drugs because I can make $400 or $500 a week working for someone sitting in a crack house, not realizing you're taking a chance with your life at 14 years old, 15 years old. You're selling crack for someone for $500 a week. But to a kid that has nothing, $500 a week is a lot of money. But he couldn't even pay the rent at his house at 14 or 15 for his mother and his 4 siblings, but he was taking a chance, with his life.
Yeah.
And I used to ask people, because I used to teach leaders breed leaders. I used to teach a lot of programs in prison. So I would ask people in prison, what are you worth? And, some guys would be like, man, I'm worth $1 million. I mean, I'm worth 10 million. And some of the answers you get, you'd be like, what? Because of the mind. In prison, a lot of people grow physically, but you don't grow mentally. So in prison, when people would tell me that, I'd say, well, I'm going to tell you what I was worth and what I'm worth today. Today, I'm priceless. But back then, when I was standing in front of the corner store with a gun in my waist and I was selling $10 bags of crack and I had $2,000 worth of crack on me, I was worth $2,000 because I was taking a chance of, losing my life for $2,000 for selling drugs. I was taking that chance.
Is there a big misconception that people get when you're talking about prison life? Like what's the biggest one that people get wrong?
So the biggest misperception about prison is, when dudes come home from prison, right? Everyone thinks you're a tough guy because you were in prison. Or as soon as they hear you were in prison, they're like you said, hey, you kind of sounded like a standoffish, like you were straight business. And, a lot of people think that, you're just a hardened dude and you're violent and, you're the toughest dude in the yard and out here in the city. That's a misconception. Prison don't make you tough. Prison will put you through some things. You'll experience some things that other people don't experience, but that does a lot of other things that people don't realize. People don't realize that stuff used to hurt my feelings. To see people get killed, it hurt me. It hurt me mentally. It hurt me emotionally.
Did you go through any kind of counseling and stuff after that? Have you ever done that?
Actually, I did. I went through some counseling when I got out of prison because I actually needed it. You hear a lot of people say, when I got out, I kind of had a hard time, or I did have a hard time. I had a hard time at Walmart. I had a hard time crossing the street, cars, and I used to hear stories like that and be like, that would never happen to me. I'm normal. But it does affect you. But eventually, the violence that you see, sadly, you become calloused. It might hurt your feelings for a minute or two because I've seen a few people get murdered, man. So to see people killed, to see people brutally stabbed, or see people cut in the face with a razor blade, or stuff like that, you're like,
you got PTSD.
Yeah, a little bit. When I got out of prison, I slept with a knife. When I got that apartment, I had my own place out there in Spencerport. When my buddy helped me out, I would have all the lights on in the hallway. I would put my dresser in front of my bedroom door, and I lived in Spencerport in a townhouse. Yeah. I put the dresser in front of the door, and I slept with a knife. And then when I had to get up and use the bathroom at 2 a.m, I'm like, I'd have to move the dresser. You walk out, you walk out into the hallway, all the lights are on, bathroom lights on. You're like, it's embarrassing to even say, but I was freaked out a little bit.
How was your wife when you got out? How was and you guys got back together? Obviously, how did she deal with all of these changes that you were going through?
She was the reason why I ended up going to counseling. She's like, you got to go to this counseling. And I had snapped a few times, not, nothing drastic, but anger, or I always felt like people were disrespecting me because prison disrespect is different. Someone cuts you in the line out here at Wegmans or jumps in front of you and grabs the shopping cart. I'm like, oh, they're being disrespectful. But they're not being disrespectful. That's how normal life works out here.
They're just being selfish assholes.
Yeah, but they don't even realize that this is what they're doing. Like I had a dude at Walmart. This is one of the incidents where I had snapped, and I didn't know how to use my card to pay, and I didn't know. They don't teach you this shit in prison. And he was like, what are you, fucking stupid? And I turned around, and I was like, I just snapped on him. I was like, yo, you stupid? You don't even realize, man. I just did 20 years in prison. There goes that tough guy stuff, right? And I think that's going to intimidate him, and it did intimidate him. And I'm obviously, not a little dude. I got a little size on me. And I was like, I'll knock your head off in here. How about that? How about I punch your teeth down your throat? That's the stuff that I needed to go to counseling for. Yeah. But the dude, I was so embarrassed that he was doing that to me. He's like, what are you, fucking stupid? I'm like,
oh yeah. No.
Why would you talk to me like that?
Even people that haven't been to prison are gonna respond to that. I mean, yeah. But yeah, there's a lot. I mean, there's all different kinds of PTSD. I remember thinking that PTSD was only, going to war.
Yeah, I actually think that too.
Or being a firefighter or something like that, all that kind of stuff. But you can have different, it's really based on the person. I found out that I was suffering from PTSD from my first professional job because my boss was such a freaking tough guy to work for and demanding and just treated us so poorly that when I finally started going to counseling for other things, my therapist was like, you have, after she asked me a bunch of questions, we had a couple of sessions, she's like, you have PTSD from your first job.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, well, I still have dreams where I wake up, I have a dream that I work there, and then I wake up and I'm like, oh, thank God I don't work there anymore. Like, to this day,
Yeah.
I haven't worked there since 2007. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's PTSD. There's different things. I didn't watch people get murdered, you know, but it's all your own personal perception and how it affects you.
For sure.
And then how you move on from that. So some people can get the tools that they need and some people can't. And I think it takes some character, like you said, to own up to that and to say, yes, I need help. Like, a lot of people will not ask for help. They don't think they need help. They can deal with it. I got this. And you can't always get it. You can't always have it. You got it. You know, you can't do this shit by yourself. You had your wife. You know, your wife brought you through a lot. And I always say that with every strong man, there's a stronger woman behind him.
Yeah.
Or, you know.
100%. I agree with that. I mean, she does a lot for me, man. She keeps me focused, keeps me directed. I'm disorganized in my office. You see sometimes at the studio, I got 1,000 things going on.
Yeah.
And
you're a busy guy.
She's my stability. And the other thing about being busy is that, you know, if I'm not busy, I get depressed. I have to always be doing something. Because as long as and this is how I operated in prison. This is why this is important. You know, in the morning, you know, I would get up, work out, go to the law library, come back, go to lunch. You know, people in prison have the same experience every day of their life. People in the world have different experiences every day. My experience was the same thing every day, but I had to stay focused. I'm reading law books. You know, as long as I didn't have time to sit back and think about how much time I had, I was okay.
Yeah.
But the minute that we get locked down, and sometimes you're locked down for 30 days, that's when I start thinking about my mom, and I start thinking about Christmas and, you know, what I'll never get out of here. And there were times when my heart would be racing. I'm like, when I do get out, you know, I will get out when I'm 63. I went in at 24. Any type of social integration, you know, where am I going to get a job? How would I take care of myself? My mom will be gone. And I'm thinking, you know, that's that young mind thinking, I'll have to live with my mom, but my mom will be dead by then. My mom's not going to be alive 40 years from now. You know, where am I going to live? And then you start thinking, man, maybe I don't want to get out, like Shawshank Redemption or something crazy like that. Thinking, man, I can't make it.
Institutionalized.
And there were times, to be honest with you, my sister's a little heavy set, right? And I'm thinking, well, if my mom passes away, I go live with my sister. But my sister's not healthy, so she might not be alive either. Is that crazy to think that?
Yeah.
But this is what prison does to you.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, you know, when I get out, 63, maybe I can get a job at a law office doing paralegal work. I might be able to survive. And then I started thinking, maybe I can get a hot dog cart at 63. And I mean, these are the crazy scenarios that I went through. And there would be times where my heart would be beating, and I'm like, I'm never getting out of here. And I'd be laying in my room in my cell. I call it a room, but I ended up getting transferred to Raybrook, New York. And, you know, I hadn't been close to home since the time I'd been incarcerated. I'd been in Kentucky at Big Sandy. I'd been in Louisiana. They put you anywhere, federal prison.
They move you around a lot, too? Just based on whatever?
Based on whatever. You get in a fight, maybe you got to leave. Like the kid stabbed me. He ended up getting transferred. I didn't at that point. But, you know, I was in Arizona, and I finally make it back. I hadn't had a visit from my family in like 8 years. I didn't see my parents. Well, my mom and my stepfather eventually, you know, we ended up close before I went to prison. So I hadn't seen them in years, but they sounded the same on the phone. But I get to Raybrook, and you smell the pine trees. Sometimes I still think about that stuff. Just the smell, like Western New York. And you're like, you're so close yet so far away. Damn, I'm sorry that it's affected me like that. But sometimes I'm back in that moment. Like I can smell them trees right now, and I'm like, damn, I'm home. I'm close, but I'm so close yet so far away. And then I would see my parents, like they came to visit me, and I was like, they don't look the way I thought they looked. They still sound the same on the phone, but they're old now, and you know, they're having trouble like walking in here. Even, you know, 10 years. I think it might have been 10 years. I hadn't had a visit in 10 years, so far away. But
it's a long freaking time.
Yeah, but then to see them, it's like, damn, man. It's shocking.
And all of that stuff is, you know, what kept you going, what drove you.
100%.
And so just for my own knowledge, because I know absolutely nothing. Well, pretty much what I know about prison life is what we've talked about today, which is nothing.
Yeah.
So when you're in prison, for you, do you have a cellmate? Are you in your own cell? Did you ever do solitary? Like all these things that we see in movies, like
everything you see in the movies is pretty much on that level. Yeah. You get a cellmate, all of that. You get a cellie. I mean, there's times when you don't have a cellie, but that's not often. As soon as your cellie goes, eventually someone comes in on the bus, you'll get a cellie. Solitary confinement, I spent 14 months of my life in the hole straight.
Holy
I've done a whole lot of time in the box, or the shoe, or whatever you might, in the state they call it the box, in federal prison they call it the shoe, special housing unit. Nothing special about that. But you get in a fight, you end up with 30 days. You get in a fight, they're going to transfer you down there for 3-4 months before they send you to another prison. Things happen. This is prison. Nothing's nice. But eventually I did 14 months straight, and that did affect me. It affected me. I would think that it didn't, but the first 2-3 weeks kill you. You're like, oh. And then you just get used to the same old routine, And there were times when I was in there, you had a cellie sometimes, and sometimes I didn't have a cellie. And then there gets to a point where you start losing it a little bit, where I'm like, I don't want a cellie. I'm like, I refuse cellies. I'm not taking them. I don't want them. I remember one particular time, there was this dude on the yard. I interviewed him on my channel like 3 times. He was a Nazi lowrider, ends up, he put a lot of work in prison. When I say that, means he stabbed some people. Kind of a dangerous dude. People from New York don't always, East Coast don't always get along with West Coast white dudes. I despised California dudes. They despised me. And me and him end up becoming, acquaintances on the yard, where I gave him his respect. He gave me my respect, whatever. And then they bring him to the hole, and they're like, hey, we got this dude right here, and, we need you to cell up with him. I'm like, I need a Christmas bag. They used to give out these Christmas bags. You're hungry in the hole. Very limited food there. So I'm like, I'm not taking them. Like, they needed a bed. So I'm like, I'm not taking this dude unless you give me a Christmas bag. He already knows what the play is. He's old school, just like me. We've been around a long time. I'm going to take him no matter what. But I want to pretend I'm not. I'm like, matter of fact, I need a Christmas bag, and I don't want him eating mine, so he's going to need a Christmas bag too. So they give us 2 Christmas bags, and he moves in. And we end up getting really close. Jimmy ends up dying, man. He gets out of prison after 25 years, riding his skateboard. He was like a skater dude from Long Beach. And I think he relocated to Oregon, I think it was, or Utah. And he got hit, man. A car hit him while he was riding his skateboard after doing all that time, man. Lost his life. Is that crazy?
Yeah, and it's just another one of those things that you hear where you go, God, you just never know. You never know.
Never.
You never know what's next. And so that's why you got to make it count. And that's what you're doing. You're doing that every day. You're making it count. And I'm hoping that because your channel is really picking up, you're doing a great job with that. And I want to see people listening to these stories and saying, I don't want to do that. It's not, because there's that, there's got to be that misconception with some of the young kids, like it's almost cool to go to prison.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, oh, you're in prison to death, in that mentality. But you're teaching them, no, that it sucks. There's nothing good about it at all.
There's nothing good about prison, man. Nothing. I mean, you hear sometimes stories, and I've been, I've said this stuff myself. Or I'm like, I met, some of my best friends I've ever met were in prison. Like, these were people that I ate with, people that I hung out with. We laughed, we joked. We spent, obviously, the holidays together, and, we'd put big, meals together, even in prison, for holidays. And you're like, damn, man, these are my real friends. These dudes were like my brothers. These are people I care about. And were there times when we laughed and joked? Yeah. But your best day in prison can't compare to your worst day out here. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have my worst day out here than my best day in there, for sure. And a lot of people they just don't realize. What they don't realize is this. They don't realize that when the federal government comes, they're talking big numbers. When you're out here selling, Fetty, and you're out here, you got crack houses, and you're that dude, and, like that kid that just recently, I think he got sentenced where, the roster officer was killed, right? Mm. Like, he was that dude out here, you know, but I think he ends up copping out to 20-something years. He just got sentenced a couple weeks ago. He probably couldn't see that. You were that dude. You know, you had them nice cars, the truck, eating what you want, dressing how you want, hanging out with all kinds of chicks probably. But now when they come back and they're like, yeah, you can cop out. You can cop out to 25 years. That's your cop out. And now you're like, damn, I'm going to be 68 when I get out. And I'm only, you know, whatever, 45. I'm going to be 68, 70 years old, you know, 63. Life is forever changed. When you get out here and you're 63 and you miss 20 years, 25 years of your life is forever changed.
Yeah.
You'll never be that dude again. You'll never be that big drug dealer again. You'll never be, you know, wearing the same clothes or driving the same cars. It's probably not going to happen. And the other thing I always looked at these dudes like this, not in an arrogant way, but I would look at some of these guys and say, this dude has nothing left. I'm going to give you an example. Stevie Burke, one of the people that the movie The Town was about. I was with Stevie in Boston. He was the shot caller for us. We were all younger guys. Shot caller means, I guess he was the boss. He told us what to do in prison, and he was our king, I guess you could say, right? And he ran the white East Coast car. Eventually, I'm like, this dude's not telling me what to do. I'm out of here. I'm not sticking around with this dude. I'm not listening to him. He's a drug addict. But people like him have nothing left in life. He has a life sentence. So what does he aspire to be? All he has is his old stories. He can tell you about all his old stories, how they robbed the armored car, or how, you know, they did this when they were 20. That's all he's got. And all he aspires to be is the shot caller. It gives him a sense of being because he has nothing left. He knows he's going to die here. So he wants to be the shot caller of the East Coast white guys. I'm going to be your boss. I'm going to tell you guys what to do. And that gave him a sense of being, because without that, it's over. You have nothing to live for, because this is it. Concrete and steel. This is your life. This is the life that you're going to live until the day that you die. So they grasp onto these small things. I had a dude in prison, they called him Pitbull. I didn't care for him, arrogant, he had money. This is when I ended up in Raybrook. And he ends up telling, I was real close with this Sereno, Southsider, right? Like Spank was my boy. Did a bunch of my tattoos on my back. And him and this dude kind of got close because the dude wanted tattoos. Spank's like, yeah, he's got a couple dollars to spend money with him, whatever. And he's out there showing his pictures, and dudes are like, yo, man, you get Chad, you got it. These are my boys that I'm kicking it with, right? Like the dudes that I kind of was like their leader to a certain extent. They're like, man, you got to see this dude's pictures. And I'm like, I don't care about his pictures. Man, he had a yacht, and the dude, someone told, man, Chad said he don't care about your pictures. So this little dude named Pitbull, he looked like that rapper Pitbull. We ended up becoming all right later on. Actually talked after he got out of prison, I got out of prison. He goes to my boy, the Sereno dude, and says, man, I'm going to hit that dude in the head with a lock. So simply because I said, I don't care about his pictures, that shit don't impress me, man. Because I know what it is. I'm smarter than those dudes that are infatuated with that stuff. That stuff don't mean nothing to me, man. Your ass is in prison just like me. And he felt like I disrespected him. He was going to hit me with a lock. Now I know tough guy stuff, but if he would have hit me with that lock and didn't get me good, he was probably in danger, because he would have ran out of air, because I would have choked him before I bled out. Like that would have happened. And I think I mentioned earlier, like I got stabbed in prison, you know? Yeah. I've been stabbed. I've been hit with rocks from behind, like for nothing.
And now I think about everything that you've been through in your life, and I think about some of the stuff that you're going through now, and it's like your worst day on the outside. You still must sit back and go, well, at least I'm not in freaking prison.
100%. Not a doubt. Not a doubt about it.
It's incredible. You're doing incredible work. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. You can find out, you can see tons of great videos on his channel, and podcast too. Is it on the podcast platforms?
Yeah, we got it on Spotify. I think we're loading up for Apple now.
And how can people get your book?
Blood on the Razor Wire on Amazon. You can read the first 3 chapters for free. I think you'll enjoy it. Actually, you know, you're asking about the book. Been in talks with some people from Hollywood. We got a big team together, looking at either a movie or a Netflix series.
Sweet.
And I think that that's getting ready to materialize. We did all the sizzlers. We got a bunch of that stuff out. Investors, Hollywood producers are involved now. So
nice.
Read the book, because you might want to go see the movie.
Yeah.
But, you know, books are always better than movies. At least that's how I feel. I read a book. I did a lot of reading in prison, so I read a lot of books.
And the movie's never as good as the book. It's never as good as the book.
No, not at all.
Thanks so much for I know you're busy, and I know your phone has been blowing up the whole time you've been here.
I turned it off about 10 minutes ago.
But I appreciate you taking the time. I really do, to come on the Blathering and tell me your story.
Okay. I appreciate you bringing me on.
Looking for more great stuff from you, Chad. Thanks.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Saltars.com